Welcome to Grit and Gravitas with Ann and Annie, bringing you savvy, spirited stories of success. We're excited to deliver 30 minutes of inspiration, impact, and goodness. We'll be bringing you guests and friends from around the country who have very special work and personal journeys. I'm Ann Deeter Gallaher, your co-host with Annie Carnathan, and this is Grit and Gravitas. Let's go! Grit and Gravitas, welcome to the studio. Annie Carnathan, we are back at it.
Wow, and better than ever. Someone says that, so I don't think I can take a license for that, but we are back and better than ever. I think that's Mike Greenberg on ESPN, but
I so look forward to our conversations, generally on a Friday morning with you. We'll probably ramp those up and have more episodes than our original 2 a month. I think we're beating our own record.
We are, and I want to start out with a little bit of that and start with the overwhelming, to me, amount of interaction with people who have listened to this.
Yes.
You and I both are doing this for the love of women, of what we do, to try to cut down a learning curve to learn from us, to give a peek behind the curtain of 2 powerful women leaders who are grinding every day and just making our way. And I want to thank people for that. At the same time, I want to remind them this will continue if people are listening to it. And we need everyone's help to share this, to have people, subscribe and download. We, you and I want this to continue. And again, I've been wrapped in this major hug from people I haven't spoken to in 20
and
plus
men,
years,
women and
men. And I was just going to get to that. It's an equal part of how much we're impacting people.
Yeah.
And I'm not gender specific. It has had an impact on me. And so the next thing I want to say before we get into what we're going to talk about is that we are doing this, and it is content. It is both of us. But this would not have remotely been to people what it is now if the Deeter Gallaher group weren't taking ownership of this in terms of PR and what you do. And I marvel at you and the respect and the admiration, now that I'm seeing this day in and day out. I mean, we're spitballing this. This is a shoestring. We're finding the time for this in such an incredibly heavy lift.
Yeah.
If we hadn't spent a year with a pandemic, you and your team have mad skills. And I'm a person that uses words, and it would be impossible to start this without telling you how full my heart is. The appreciation, the gratitude, everything I feel to say, the Lord brought you right on time. And so just want to say that.
Sweet Annie Carnathan, thank you. That means the world to me.
I want to pay that homage. You are, again, mad skills, you and your team. And to see it up close and professionally and personally, wow, gobsmacked, phenomenal. So the topic today, I want to talk about International Women's Day. And now
Women's History Month we're in as well.
At Grit and Gravitas, every day is Women's International Day.
We have deemed every day, yes, as women in high gear.
So to get wrapped up in that blanket Monday is to see women or men, right? But primarily women talking about what that means to them. To be a woman, to position that against every role a woman has. What I always come back to in the deepest conversations I have with women is this notion of quote unquote having it all. Mm-hmm. It's overused. It means whatever someone wants it to mean. In this show, it only matters to you and I what we think, because that's what we're sharing.
Right.
What do you think the line is, Anne, between sacrifice and regret? What is that razor thin line?
Well, I'm a person that doesn't want to reach 85 and have a laundry list of regrets. So on the front end, I try to, and in the PR business, I try to figure out what are the unintended consequences for our clients. And I've always done that for myself and my family. If we do A, what's B? So as far as the women having it all, and my journey is totally different than yours, and it's different than a lot of people. I off-ramped, and that was a very deliberate decision, trying to fully understanding we're not going to have it all. And I was fine that my career would be on the back burner for a season. So we all have seasons. If the career was on the front burner, I can see probably things would have been different for our three sons. And I would not have been able to invest. There's just not enough time in a day. There's only so much of you, and you decide who gets, the cream of you.
Time non-renewable.
Yeah.
And they say spend it for a reason.
And
there's a price to that.
We do have choices, and some have more choices than others. If you're a single mom, your choices are less than my choices were. But as far as I never believed that I could have it all, but I could be in control of the choices I had and what I was willing to what the trade-offs were, what the risk benefit was. And I was fine. I didn't have to be run the PR firm when I was 30. I knew that there would be a season. I felt that I could control bursting back on the scene, at age 40, as it turned out. And I never believed that I couldn't make a difference, no matter what age. I feel that about all women, that if you off-ramped and you're great before you off-ramped, there's an opportunity and there's a window and you can be great again back in the workforce or back in the career, however that might look for you. But having it all and ending the day, exhausted at 11, I don't think you can have it all, but you can have your choices at any given time. For your season, having it all looks like this. And then 40, when you go back to work and the children are a little bit older, having it all looks totally different.
I believe women struggle a significant amount with making that choice, owning it, and moving on from it.
Yeah.
And if I say, this is the part of my day that work will fill, let's be really honest, work, it will fill whatever you give it. Mm-hmm. And I know for sure it's going to be there when I get back.
Right.
But what is the sense of women sacrifice, regret, that always seem to look back and go, was that the right decision? What is it about women who can say, to the capacity that I have it all, the sacrifices I've made are without regret? How do we reconcile the fact that if we do this fully, not glancing at your phone, not saying, what am I making for dinner tonight? Not, what's the schedule like for the weekend? Is my husband getting him or I'm getting him?
Yeah.
What does it mean to own that moment fully and without regret or guilt?
Well, I think to your earlier comments, I think women deeply, deeply struggle with that. And especially young women who want to really shift their career into high gear in their 20s. And then they're, deciding on having children in their mid-30s or later. And that's a career choice too. I think you have to dig deep emotionally. It's an emotional resilience conversation. And it's a conversation we all have with ourselves. And not so much what do other women think of my decisions, but at the end of the day, are you okay with your decisions? Is your family okay with your decisions? And that's, you cannot waste emotional and creative energy constantly looking back. You're the one talking about the rear view mirror and the windshield. You just have to say, those were the decisions. I own them. As every business decision we make, we have to own it. And there's room for malleability going forward, iteration. Okay, it didn't work out. That daycare situation didn't work out. We're going to change it. The work situation, sometimes women, say no to a promotion opportunity because of the time required to do that. What I deeply admire about you is that you've said, I can give X amount of hours, or I can give 90% of Annie Carnathan to Universal Media, but I cannot give it to a board position right now until Walker's in college, or until, he's more on his way and out of the home. I deeply admire. Some people struggle deeply with that. Like, I need to have it all. I need to serve on the board. I need to be, doing service hours at the food bank or Salvation Army. I've got to do scouts. I've got to do, serve in church. And that's where we become depleted. And then we're really not fully invested in anything we're in.
Or feeling as if we're doing anything well.
Yeah.
And when I look at you from 3 Sons 40, you chose just about the most difficult thing you could possibly do in your career. Instant sacrifice, instant balance of what emotions it takes to get up that hill. Would you get up that hill? To, hey, I'm still a mom that yesterday was 100% with my family.
Yeah.
That's a huge pivot. It's not like your big toe got dipped in.
Yeah.
It was a huge. And so I think about the support to do that. It wasn't just your husband, wasn't just your sons. I mean, that tribe had to be a huge part. And I find as I get older, the concentric circle shrinks. I want to enjoy the people that are just, closely connected with me more. Their support is enormous. I don't have to go through all the things I do with some people who just don't understand me. And that's not an excuse. But if we understand intent and we develop that, it just gets deeper, to me, more rewarding.
Yeah.
And that ebbs and flows as time goes on. But as it shrinks, it's sort of like, oh yeah, you're always who I thought you were. And the value in that makes me really emotional. Yeah. Because we're not perfect people. Mm-mm. We hurt people. We do things if we could do over again, like the do-over.
Yeah.
But they're real relationships. So when you look back, I think there are probably people that from day one you say to yourself, wow, do they even know the role they had in what Deeter Gallaher Group now is and still will become?
Yeah.
Do you think about that?
And I think, yes. And I think there are opportunities for us as women to be much more supportive. And, I'm thinking of online or even in women's leadership groups or women's businesswomen's groups to not to malign others like, oh, did you just stay at home? Was that all you did? There's certainly opportunity. Anyone listening, if you're a young mom and you decided to, off-ramp and stay at home, all the, support to you. And there's a spot for you to on-ramp again. And if you, decided to stay on your steady ascension, support for you too. It's not a, one group against another. And I've felt that and times that I've talked to business women's groups, very few people come with that story. Like I off-ramped for 15 years and I never felt that was a detriment. And I can see the fruits of my decision, and it was okay that Anne's skills were invested, in scouts and everything I did do, because I feel that has a big payoff. But then when I came up on the radar, it was kind of cute that all 3 sons and my husband were like, "Go, mom!" This is, and it was non-traditional. But I think we as women, we need to support each other, not say, "Oh, is that what you did? I think there's room to say, come join us. We'll support you. Do you need help in this capacity? Do you need help in this? Do you want, insights on childcare? How did you figure that out? I think the pandemic has opened a lot of opportunities for us to think of a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. What we thought was 8 to 5 daycare at this situation now is totally different. Now I can work from home. And now where those roles are shifting, and I think women can see success in new areas. And that's one of the positives, if you would, of how we've responded to the changing work environment. You spoke about that on the news.
Yes, which was the amazing work of the Deeter Gallaher group for that opportunity. And you talk about the support of your sons. And I was home for 12 weeks.
Wow.
And I really, it was interesting. I hadn't taken a sick day for 10 years, and companies says, hey, you have 10 weeks accrued sick days and 2 weeks of vacation, because I had 4 or 6, and it was like, hey, this is great. So the support, though, and the way I looked at that was that ultimately our son would want me to be happy. Mm-hmm. Could I have stayed home? I mean, I think anything is possible.
Right.
And now absolutely anything is possible in terms of, where you physically are. Yeah. But when I think about him today, like a junior in high school, and I look back at the sacrifices I did have to make when I was working, especially travel, but it was almost never more than a day or two. And it was always with the thought that here's why I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. Are you good when I'm not here? And look, that's what brings me into the support of your spouse, your partner, whomever you're sharing your life with. Right? Love who you love. And so I think that was really looking back, which we're doing in this show, looking back without the support of my husband, which I think gave them a huge opportunity for time.
Totally.
For the routine, mm-hmm. for things that as a mom I just did. Whether it's packing lunch or
right.
The myriad of clubs and sports, and that. And I look back, and so not to overstate that, but I think it would have been drastically different. And as we rocket forward, in retrospect, I don't think about that as much as I should. Yeah. And when I look back, it's sort of like, oof, there's so many unknown things I've never acknowledged to help me do what I've done. And now I have not missed a major thing. And so I'm jonesing a little bit, because in a couple of weeks, going to get his license, right? Prayer up to the Lord that passes. And then I'm not taking him to school for the first time since he was 5 years old.
Wow.
Every day. And that's our best time. And what did that do for him?
Sure.
What did that do for me? And what were the sacrifices to do that? And were they sacrifices?
Well, when you look back, can you recall any instance where, wow, I took Walker to school and I was 10 minutes late to meeting A, B, or C? You probably can't even recall an instance where you've even remembered it or it mattered to you, that the time with him was what mattered and left the biggest impression, not the business. And I live by schedules and deadlines, and I'm always hyper focused on, I got to do this with this client. And then, 5 years down the road, you think, I don't even remember what that was. It didn't have the importance that I felt at the minute. So it's good that we can decide what really today matters in our lives and where do we need to invest our time.
And we don't set the topics up for these shows.
I know. You've taken me on a whole different path.
But you illustrated to me one of the best business vitamins to date, which is we don't even remember those moments. And what do we remember?
Right.
And if we can say to someone in X amount of time, you're not going to remember that, there's enough difficulty out there that we don't need to look in the mirror and beat that person up.
Right.
We need more grace. That's a whole other show. And the ability to say to people in business, it's going to be all right. it's really not significant the way you think it is now. And again, that fine line between sacrifice and regret. And I say to people, it's spending time.
Mm-hmm.
Spend infers money, right? You're going to pay for everything we've done in terms of our non-renewable time. Are you good with that? Don't wait until then,
right,
to sweat all these small things that cost you more than you thought they would.
I never spent time as I approached 40 thinking, I wonder if I'll have time to start this business. If I really had thought about that, I probably wouldn't have started. I would have been so overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, nobody's done it like this. So maybe there's a reason. Maybe I should be thinking twice about this. I didn't think twice about it. And I laughed and I felt like the Dr. Seuss, Are You My Mother? Where I would talk to business leaders and say, could you help me? Could you help me? And one of our chief reasons for this show is to shorten women's learning curves. If you choose a path to business or starting your business or ramping up to a C-suite or some executive leadership, our experiences, we hope, will be very beneficial to you. So we will tell you, we made a right turn here and we probably, in retrospect should have gone left, or these are the people you need in your orbit to help guide you. Both of us, I think, are really good at asking for help. We know what we don't know. And I think that's a business vitamin. Know what you don't know. And find those people who have the skills that you need and get them. You don't need to know everything. We're not good at everything. Regret is, that's
corrosive.
Yes.
Toxic.
So don't spend much time, any time, focusing on that in the present. Surround yourself with people who really are positive, not necessarily all like-minded, but who can add curiosity to your thinking, who can make you think in new and fresh ways, and just stop looking back. And I think that that has a health benefit to it, especially through a pandemic. The more you control the thoughts in your mind and the people you surround yourself, and we can control those, the healthier and more successful you'll be.
That's at the heart of almost everything. My competitors to Universal Media, the people who leave our employment to go somewhere else. I'm pretty sure the last time I looked, I can't control any of that. And why is that energy going to either one of those things? And I could go on. And it illustrates to me, you're 40 and you have 3 boys that are now of an age where you can, dive back into your career with an energy and a focus. And I'm basically having my son after fits and starts and an entire challenge there. And I only knew that I didn't have him to not be with him. Yeah. And when I look back at that, you know what I had to do, Ian? I had to prioritize. And people say, well, I have so much to do today. It's like, well, what's the priority? Oh, I was like 5 or 7. You can't have 5 or 7. It has to be 1 through 7.
So who influenced you in that decision to, return? 12 weeks is like not enough time with a baby. So who helped you make that transition? Who helped you make that decision? Was it Rob? Was it your mom? Was it your family?
At the core of it, it's one of the things I've worked on for so long. I'm extraordinarily independent. Honestly, at the detriment to me. I should have learned how to need people way, way, way earlier than I did.
That's a show too.
I
think that's a show. Episode.
I had to have all the answers. I'm a hard charger. I go very fast and sometimes speed, not good. Right. And I've paid that price. And I don't think it's patience, because who has enough patience, really? But one of the most difficult things I learned was sometimes you have to let people and things come to you. And there's a cadence to that. And that's a trust on a whole other level with yourself or your faith or the people around you. And when you have that belief that everything happens for a reason, and that's absolutely directly tied to my faith, I started to let go. Back then, I was more focused on him because that's and how work, regardless of what happened, had to take a back seat. And could they be driving passenger? Did they have to actually go in the back seat? But I've never wavered from that. And so when you look at the priority, it was always very clear to me, and every decision I made was based on what was the sacrifice for time with him.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I look at a day, I'm up very early, early to bed, early to rise. I sit in solitude and say, okay, here's the day. What absolutely has to happen today?
Right.
And things were some say, well, where is that? It wasn't the same priority as maybe it was yesterday, and it didn't get done. But I hold everything to that because now, and especially with COVID, the world blew up.
Right.
It was like
right.
every day I started out so peaceful, walking the dogs, and here's my day, and life was what happened while I was making plans. But it blew up spectacularly. Schedules started to become 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What are we scheduling? Like before I would have to drive there. I would have to, now it's like, no, I can't keep going from call to call to call. So that became whatever it took to wait a minute, has to go back on the rails. Priorities. They're difficult to establish, even more difficult to adhere to. But we have to.
And for women, we carry probably still the lion's share of the family, the responsibilities, the children's activities, the school events. Then you throw in a Zoom, your children are learning from home now. You're trying to conduct office meetings. It is a heavy lift. But I think, excuse me, to our point, we set priorities. It would be great if we could all, wake up ourselves and have 30 minutes for our own cup of coffee and then do our yoga routine or our workout and take all our vitamins and be perfectly dressed and makeup on. That's just not reality. Many times Instagram is not reality of what our homes look like. But when we sit and think, what are the top 3 priorities? And start investing, maybe it's your children and maybe you have a child that's struggling in school and you realize, okay, this meeting I'm going to have to postpone this to the afternoon, or I need really to pour myself into A, B, and C, a child or, a spouse or home decisions. And I think now we can do that without regret because the changing workforce, and we just need to, be a little softer on ourselves and have grace for ourselves. And to our discussion earlier, that 10 years from now, are we really gonna, say, okay, I should have worked out another 30 minutes that day, or I should have spent, time. I think it's always good when I sit down now, my grandchildren, Mimi, can you read? And it's just good to say, yes, I'm going to be present. I really don't care what text comes in. I'm just going to absorb your curiosity, your sweet face for 30 minutes. And I'm going to read Dr. Seuss with you. And instead of, looking, I don't have an iPhone watch, so I don't want to know what the alerts are or what the texts are. I just want to be present. And I think, hopefully we can all get better at that.
Huge on women generally being much more multitasked. With that comes the enormous baggage of guilt, and that comes in as many forms as there are women. So we're going to wrap up Grit and Gravitas today, but to me that was a central core of women in the workplace, International Women's Day, Women's History Month, and we're going to continually come back to that because that's a really huge vitamin and takeaway from how we manage our soul.
And I think we're going to work on just supporting each other at every level, reminding ourselves to give ourselves grace and give others grace who have made different choices than we've had, and focus on priorities and realize that our decisions 10 years from now will not look as intense and critically important as we make them today. So with that,
you have said it all today.
That flew by.
That boom.
So
done.
We can't wait for more guests. Annie Carnathan, thank you for being present with me today.
Right back at you, Ann. Please, everybody, subscribe, download,
share.
and share and make this a huge tribe, because we're all rowing the boat together. Love many, trust few, always row your own canoe. Judith Wald. Thanks, Ann.
Take care. Have a high gear day. Thanks for listening. It's our desire that these stories will bring energy, ideas, and fresh thinking that you can use today. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram, and have a high gear day.